Hello and welcome to a Pokemon XD Gala Darkness Butterfree only challenge. Now, Butterfree is not really well known for being the strongest Pokemon, because it's just an early bug that you get on early routes in the original games, but maybe it will surprise us here. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. For base stats, Butterfree has 60 HP, 45 attack, 50 defense, 80 special attack, 80 special defense, and 70 speed. It gets access to mostly normal, psychic, and grass type moves, but it also gets access to a couple flying moves, some ghost moves it seems, and most notably, it also gets access to Silver Wind, a move that when used has a 10% chance of raising all your stats all at once, which will come in handy later throughout the game. So our Butterfree in particular has a brave nature, raising its attack and lowering its speed, which isn't particularly good because I'd rather it be a bit faster to outspeed some threats, but also it will raise the damage on its stab moves. So it could come in handy. It gets the ability Compound Eyes, which as you can see there, just raises accuracy. So it's like having a constant accuracy boost at all times, making its powder moves pretty good. And according to Bulbapedia, Butterfree at level 10 just learns Confusion. Now it can learn moves from its previous evolutions, but I decided I would just keep it what it says it is. So anyway, moving on just a little ways into the game here, we're going to go into this fight, and as you'll see, our Butterfree has Confusion and Mimic. Now the reason for Mimic is twofold. One, I can't hit Dark types at the moment because they completely are immune to Psychic type moves. And two, there's this fun little strategy here that you can do with the Abra, and you can copy its previous move. In this case, it was Thunder Punch, which is going to be really good against the Horsey. And the only reason I'm really doing this is just because the Confusion doesn't really do too much damage to Abra. Unfortunately, Thunder Punch isn't going to do that much damage to the Shroomish, but our Confusion should do more than enough to take it down. Okay, well, maybe not. Maybe a second try will do? And on this attempt, I got Fire Punch and was able to take down the Shroomish in just a couple hits, and able to take down the Horsey. So, this is going to be a fun run. I can already feel it. So now that we're into the kind of boring section of the video where I'm going to start rambling, I'd just like to take a moment and say thank you Clash of Clans for putting out some suggestions. Butterfree was just kind of happenstance. I asked someone I knew what Pokemon they would like to see, and they said Butterfree. And so when I saw your comment on Wurmple, Caterpie, and what's the other one called? Weedle. I just kind of went, oh, that's a bit funny. So I was already about halfway through the game when you sent that, so I'll come back around to it. Corphish also sounds like a pretty cool idea. It'd be nice to do another mono water, but it evolves into a dark type, which could be pretty cool. So I'll definitely come around to that one as well. And also, keep the suggestions coming. And, hey, like and subscribe while you're down there, right? I don't know. Anyway, I would like to say that the next video might be delayed, because usually I've kept a nice buffer of 1 to 2 videos ahead of me, but unfortunately I've run out. So if the next video gets delayed, my bad. Here I'm just putting on some video of me using Mimic to get Thundershock to take down some of these water types. I don't know, this battle is kind of hard. And right here I get access to the move Gust, which isn't that good, but it's stab, so it's going to be 60 base power. So I decided to teach it over Mimic, just because Mimic's a little hard to actually use, because you have to take an attack before you can gain an attack. And here we are at the first boss of the game, Lavrina. She's not really threatening with her lead Pokemon, neither of them are very strong, but then out comes her Roselia, which is usually her strongest Pokemon because it has the move Leech Seed. If it gets set up, it's going to do a ton of damage, but luckily Butterfree having a Psychic type move, I'm able to take it down in a single hit. And then out comes Delcatty, who is her strongest Pokemon and also her Shadow type Pokemon, which means that all of its attacks are going to do super effective damage against me. So the first thing I do is I put it to sleep. Because of the Compound Eyes ability, Sleep Powder is not quite 100% accurate, but it's definitely pretty close. It might be around 90. So I'm going to be using it reliably, unlike Venusaur, who I used it a lot, but very often it would just miss. So anyway, this battle's winding down now. I should be able to take down the Love Disc without too much trouble. Yeah, it's doing almost nothing to me. And that is Lavrina down, first try. So this is all going pretty well. So, on to the chores. The first thing we gotta do is, of course, the obligatory Mirror Bee mention. This is a Pokemon XD Gala Darkness video, so he's gotta be here. Yeah, schmoovin'. And on the way, I learned the move Psybeam, which I'm going to teach immediately. It's just basically a better Confusion. And then I also catch the Shadow Ralts, because it is holding the Twisted Spoon item, which raises all Psychic type damage, which will be very handy in the future. And I go to my favorite Pokemart and go pick up my two favorite TMs, those being Hidden Power and Protect. And I'm going to teach Hidden Power right away. And in this case, it just happens to be Fire, which is, I think, the first time I've gotten Hidden Power Fire, but it's also going to be very useful this run, because Bug and Flying can't hit a lot of types very effectively. And here we are moving on to the Snaddle fight. And as you can see, I'm already at half health. That's because of the fight prior. It's two fights back to back, so you usually take a bit of damage. Unfortunately, I took quite a lot. And even more unfortunate is Butterfree does not stack up well into him at all. So, after another failed attempt that I'm not going to bother showing, I just go on to train, because this isn't going to work. And one of the big reasons is that even if I get past the lead Quagsire and Lantern, his next Pokemon is Lunatone, which basically resists all of my moves that I have so far. So I train up to level 47 and get access to the move Silverwind, which I'm going to teach over Gust, just because even though Gust is a okay type, it's not very good overall, and it's not doing too much damage either. And with that, I head back to the battle, and after just a few more attempts, I get this run. So I lead with a Sleep Powder into Quagsire, that way it can't set up Rock Tombs. And Lantern uses Shockwave, and it's not doing too much damage to me anymore, but it is still damage that is going to add up over time, so I also put Lantern to sleep. Now, one of the big things in this fight is just getting pretty decent sleep luck. So now that both are asleep, I can use Silverwind, because it is going to be a two-shot on the Quagsire anyway. Unfortunately, Lantern wakes up on the second turn, but I can't really be bothered to put it back to sleep, because if Quagsire wakes up, I take a ton of damage from Rock Tomb. So I take it down, and then out comes Lunatone, his Shadow Pokemon. Another Shockwave. And I'm not quite at half health, but I'm getting pretty close. And here's where Silverwind comes in, because he is part Psychic type, it is going to be doing a lot more damage. And then out comes Castform. And yeah, that's starting to rack up damage pretty good, so I decide to try to put to sleep the Lantern. And I do. Let's hope that that sticks for a while, because I'm getting pretty low on health here. I go for Sleep Powder on Castform. I'm not sure if it was really necessary. I think it's probably a one-shot with Psybeam anyway, but I probably want to keep the Castform alive between the two, because it does way less damage. And here we get the first Omni boost that I've shown. So I'm going to be taking less damage and I'm going to be doing more damage. So that's kind of nice. Silver Wind takes down the Lantern. And then out comes Matang, who, had we not been so lucky on the Hidden Power type, could have been a threat, but luckily Hidden Power is able to take it down in a single hit. If not, I think Silver Wind would have done pretty good damage, but I'm not sure if it would have one-shot. And a Psybeam should be able to take down the cast form. And that's Snaddle. Now, right before the next boss of the game, we can pick up the move Psychic, which I'm going to do immediately, and replace Psybeam. So, let's go ahead and get right into it. Against Gunzap. Now, this is the second attempt, let me preface that, because the first attempt I came in here pretty low health, and honestly, the same strategy is basically what I used for both, so it'd be a little redundant doing the first one and then just doing this one. So I decided to just omit the first one, move right on to the second one. Anyway, this guy's whole gimmick is he spams Hyper Beam, basically. So from now on, that Nuzleaf will always use Hyper Beam. The Vileplume can actually use some other moves, but for the most part it uses Hyper Beam. But the big thing is that this Whiscash actually has Rock Tomb, which, just like the Quagsire before, is 4 times effective and does a ton of damage, so I want to get rid of it as quick as possible. And that's actually what ruined my run last time, was I thought it was just going to use Hyper Beam, and then it started using Rock Tomb. So I'm able to take it down this time and get to his final Pokemon, which is Skarmory. Now, luckily we do have Hidden Power Fire, so it should be able to one-shot it, hopefully. And it does. Okay. So, now that that's gone, it's just the Nuzleaf left, and honestly I could use Silver Wind or Hidden Power here. I decided to just use Hidden Power and take him down. Anyway, on to the next fight. This is Gorgon. His gimmick is Earthquake, but our Butterfree is part Flying type, so his gimmick doesn't exactly work. So he's going to be using moves that I'm not used to dealing with, really. I think the last time I had to deal with a different pattern was the Charizard video. So, instead of spamming Protect every other turn, everything's just going to attack every turn. Which, in some ways, could make it easier, but I think it's just a worse fight overall. I don't know why I use Psychic there. I know it's not very effective. Slowking uses Headbutt. And at this point, I'm already getting kinda low on health. Another Psychic, and oh, it doesn't take down the Ursaring. And Slash actually does quite a bit of damage. And Headbutt's doing a little bit of damage, more than I'm healing. Okay, so let me try just Sleep Powdering something. Because if I can just lessen the damage, I can probably start out healing it. Slowking uses another Headbutt, taking me down pretty low. I decided to use Silver Wind here. It is super effective, but also the Omni Boost would be pretty nice. I don't get it. Out comes Primeape, who is his first Shadow Pokemon. And Ursaring wakes up and kills me. Okay, well, that was a decent first attempt. Let's move on to the second attempt here, where I am going to change things up just a little bit. I go for Psychic to take down the Celio right off the bat. And then out comes Slowking once again. Now, he does miss the Iron Tail this time. That's pretty nice. And I decide to put the Lairon to sleep. And that's because Lairon really isn't too much of a threat. Yeah, it's dangerous, but also it's a 30% chance to miss on all of its Iron Tails. So I take down the Slowking. And still no Omni Boost, that's a bit unfortunate. Out comes the Ursaring. And I go for Psychic. It's still not going to one-shot, but I should be able to take it down next turn. Now, unless Slash crits, it's not really that much of a threat. So I decided to use Silverwind here just to take it down, because if I do get that 10%, it might be huge. Out comes Primeape, who, once again, is Shadow Pokemon. This thing would actually be pretty dangerous if it hit us, so I need to take it down right away. And I am able to. And then out comes his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Hypno. Now this thing can either be kind of dangerous or not dangerous at all, because it likes to lead with a move called Shadow Down sometimes, depending on the Pokemon. But also, it's got one of the strongest moves in the game, Shadow Storm, and I'm able to take it down in a single hit, so none of that really mattered, I guess. Anyway, I decided to go for Sleep Powder here just to ensure victory against the Lairon. And I believe just after a couple of hidden powers, it should go down. And that'll be Gorgon. So second try, not too bad, especially against a lot of Pokemon who could do big damage to me. And with that, we move on to the final area of the game. And honestly, time-wise, Butterfree is doing pretty decent at this point. Like, it's keeping up with some pretty good Pokemon on the tier list, so maybe it'll do wonders at the end. Anyway, we move right along to Lavrina, who, on our first attempt, froze and destroyed us. So, second attempt, we go in, and from the first attempt, I learned that Psychic does actually take down the Gorvis in a single hit, which is good to know because it can freeze us like you just saw there. Now, unfortunately, the Gardevoir is the opposite gender, so it is going to use Attract immediately. So I decide to take it down this turn, and luckily I'm actually able to hit through Attract. I'm pretty sure it's a 50-50 coin flip, whether or not you can actually go through it. And then out comes her first Shadow Pokemon, which has a move called Shadow Panic, which causes you to be confused. So between the two Pokemon here, even though Roselia can attract me, the Farfetch'd is definitely scarier. And out comes her second Pokemon, which is Shadow Altaria. And it just has the move Shadow Break. So, but between the two, it's definitely a bit scarier than the Roselia. So I decided to just take down the Roselia now, and to get rid of the Leech Seed as well. And as you can see, Shadow Break's doing about a quarter-ish. And I'm doing well over half, so I should be able to take it down this turn with relative ease. And that's Lavrina's second attempt. Pretty good, honestly. Up at the top of the mountain, we now run into Snaddle, who is running a similar team to what he had before, but with a lot of new faces. Anyway, I hidden power to get rid of the Metang immediately because the Quagsire has Mud Shot this time around, not Rock Tomb. So it shouldn't be that big a threat, right? Well, it now has Body Slam, which has a small chance to paralyze, meaning that I think this specific attempt is forfeit, because now I'm moving last, and on top of that, quarter of the time, I'm not going to be able to move at all. But anyway, I'm able to get to his Shadow Pokemon, which is a Solrock. It sets up Shadow Sky, Quagsire goes for Body Slam, taking me down to about half. I get paralyzed, and Fruity Pebbles rain down. I go for another Psychic, Shadow Rave, not doing too much. And Psychic does actually connect, and it's doing half. Now, unfortunately here, I don't really have a good move for Solrock, because I'm pretty sure, unless I'm mistaken, I think it's Rock Fire, not Rock Psychic? But maybe I'm wrong, I don't actually remember. Anyway, a couple of attempts later, I get this one. So I go for Psychic on the Quagsire immediately to take it down. Out comes Scizor. Metang uses Metal Claw. Luckily it doesn't get an attack boost. I go for Hidden Power to take down the Scizor right away. The crit wasn't necessary, it's 4 times weak to it. Out comes Solrock once again. Tang uses another Metal Claw, but I'm able to heal off a good chunk of that damage. Psychic will take it down to about half again. It's going to set up Shadow Sky. Another Metal Claw. Fruity Pebbles rain down. And now I'm able to take down the Soul Rock, which leads into his next Pokemon, which is a Cast form. Now this thing is actually pretty threatening to us, because it has Flamethrower now, so it can actually do quite a bit of damage. So I'm going to take that down immediately. And as we saw from the first battle, the Tang's not really too big of a threat, because I can take it down in a single hit. Now Starmie. This thing is usually pretty fast, and unfortunately our nature does lower our speed. So I'm hoping that the level advantage I have is enough to outspeed. So I go for Silver Wind. And, yep. Oh, and there's the Omni Boost. Not really necessary anymore, but hey, still good to see. Another Metal Claw. And one more round of Fruity Pebbles. And one more Hidden Power. And I take down Snaddle pretty easily. So, we move right along into the Ardos fight. And this might be the hardest fight, probably, for Butterfree. Simply because, as I always say, special attackers don't do too well in this fight. Specifically because of his Pokemon later on down the line. Anyway, I take down the bird right away, the Swallow, and I find out Alakazam has Ice Punch, which is 4 times effective. So I take a big chunk of damage from that, so I need to take down it. And Kingdra uses Double Edge instead of Hydro Pump. So I am taking damage on the physical side, of which I have way less physical defense. And the reason I target Heracross here is because it has Rock Tomb, which, as we already know, is a pretty scary move for Butterfree. But the difference is that Heracross actually has a decent physical attack stat. I decide to focus the Electabuzz here, because it's his first Shadow Pokemon, but also it's a strong physical and special attacker, so I want to get it off the field as quick as possible, and I lose this attempt. Okay, well that's alright. Let's go right back into it. And by right back into it, I mean, well, actually, only 2 battles later, surprisingly, where I actually beat him. So I decide to take down the Alakazam immediately, because, as we saw, Ice Punch is actually pretty scary in this fight. The Fruity Pebbles come down, though, because the Swallow is still alive. So at this point, I take down the Swallow. And then out comes the Heracross once again. But unfortunately, there's no way for me to make the Kingdra not just spam Double Edge, so I am going to be taking quite a bit of damage from that. Fruity Pebbles rain down, doing damage to all. And I go for a Psychic to take down the Heracross, which, as we saw before, is a one-shot. And then out comes Electabuzz once again. Oh, and Electabuzz also has a move called Shadow Half, which halves all the HP of the Pokemon on the field. So, he's threatening in that way too. Anyway, I go for Sleep Powder on the Electabuzz, because I don't want to deal with it. If I can just take it down in its sleep, I don't have to worry about all that extra damage. And Fruity Pebbles rained. So I go for Psychic, and I actually decide to target the Kingdra here. And the reason, oh thanks Crit, and the reason for that is to get the Snorlax out, because the aforementioned Shadow Half could be pretty nice if he does wake up and decide to use it. But in any case, I decide to use Sleep Powder into Snorlax as well, because Snorlax has a move called Shadow End, which is the strongest shadow move in the game, coming off of a Snorlax, which I really don't want to see. Now I go for Silver Wind here to see how much it does. It does a good amount. And luckily both are asleep. Didn't get an Omni Boost. Another Silver Wind. Come on. And I don't get it there either. Okay. But Snorlax is still asleep. And the thing about Snorlax is it is more of a special tank than it is a physical one, and okay, that was a little scary. That was I thought I was dead there. Anyway. Oh. Okay. Well, you know how I said Sleep Powder isn't 100% accurate? Yeah, there it was. It is pretty close to super accurate, but it's not quite there, so very, very rarely it doesn't work. Anyway, Silverwind takes it down very low, and he doesn't wake up, which means that I should be able to take it down this turn. And just like that, Ardos has been defeated. Fairly easily, too. Anyway, we move right along to Gorgon, who, as we saw before, can be kind of threatening. And as you can see, this start here is a little scarier for Butterfree, personally, I think. Just because Slowking now has Ice Beam. Ursaring uses Slash, which is still doing a decent chunk. I decide to try to take it down, which I cannot. Okay, well that's unfortunate, but it's pretty close. I think just a level, and it should be able to do it on a high roll. So I decide to just Hidden Power it. I think I probably should have Silver Winded it, because I could get that small chance of getting better stats, but oh well. Because I'm now down at 18 HP with a lowered defense, and Walrein is going to use Ice Beam into me. Unless I can take it down, which I can't. And Ice Beam takes me down on the first attempt. So, a little stronger than usual. Anyway, here on the third attempt now, I go for Psychic because I have leveled up. I'm able to take down the Ursaring in a single hit. Out comes the Aggron, which is going to, just as before, spam Iron Tail. So it's not too big of a threat, but I am going to try to take it down. And yeah, okay, that's not doing as much damage as I would have hoped. Slowking uses Ice Beam and gets a crit. Okay, well that's not very good either. Another Hidden Power takes down the Aggron though. And I've put myself in a bit of a precarious situation because both Walrein and Slowking are just going to be spamming Ice Beam at me. So I'm risking the freeze twice as often now. So I decided to go for Sleep Powder on the Walrein because it's going to be doing more damage with it, I think, because it is a stab move. Slowking uses Ice Beam once again. No crit this time though. And here I decide to put Slowking to sleep as well. And that's because even though Slowking is a big threat with Ice Beam, it's less of a threat compared to Walrein. And honestly, if it just stays asleep, I can just focus on the rest of the Pokemon coming through. No Omni Boost, unfortunately. So I am kind of hoping on some sleep luck here. But even if it did wake up, I could probably still manage because next is Poliwrath. And on the first turn, this thing always sets up Shadow Sky. So I would have a turn to try to take down the Slowking. Anyway, I take down the Poliwrath in a single hit because, as I've learned, it is in fact a fighting type. Out comes his second Shadow Pokemon, Mr. Mime, and Slowking's still asleep. It's actually cooperating with me. Silverwind should be able to take it down in a single hit, which it does. And Slowking wakes up, uses Ice Beam, but a little too late. So I'm able to take it down in a single Silverwind and beat Gorgon on the third attempt. And now we move on to Eldis, who is Surprisingly pretty hard. Okay, maybe not surprisingly, because obviously it's the battle right before the final, but in this case, Ninjask is going to behave in its secondary, I guess, behavement pattern, which is it's going to spam Protect every other turn, and then a move. So, usually it would use Silver Wind on the first turn, and until it runs out of PP, but because I resist it, it's going to do this the entire time. Anyway, with that in mind, I can use Sleep Powder on the Salamence this turn, knowing that I'm not going to be hit, and hopefully be able to take it down in a single hit. Maybe. So, I go for Psychic. Ninjask goes for Aerial Ace, doing about a quarter, so obviously it is pretty strong, and I'm doing half, and Shadow Rush is doing a quarter as well. Okay, well that's not a great spot to be in. Aerial Ace takes me down. Okay, well that's alright. I teach Protect here, that way I can actually move in the motions with the Ninjask. And so first turn, I go for Psychic onto the main Ectric. And I learned very quickly that it is not a one-shot 100% of the time. Okay, well that's alright. I'll use Protect. Aerial Ace and Shadow Wind don't hit. And I decide to take down the main Ectric with a Silver Wind. Hopefully get that stat up. And I don't. Out comes Salamence once again, which does have Intimidate, so it does actually cut my attack damage down, which in this case really only affects Silver Wind, so it's not really too big a deal. Anyway, I go for Psychic once again to try to take it down, and in this case I also didn't put it to sleep, and that's because if I did, I would have to Protect the next turn and then sleep, or hope he stays asleep, otherwise I'm taking more damage later on. So I decided to just go for it. And Psychic might not actually take him down. Okay, never mind, it does. Sometimes when it's about 50, it either goes yellow or it stays green, depending on the health. I go for Protect once again. Flygon uses Double Edge. And Flygon really only ever uses Double Edge, so it's a bit of a threat, but not too big a threat. I go for Psychic to see how much it does, and it's doing almost all of its health. Okay, that's pretty good news. And Double Edge actually takes itself down. Okay, out comes Marowak. Now this thing is quite a threat because it has the Thick Club item, which doubles its attack stat. So it's going to be doing a ton of damage if it actually hits with Shadow Wind. So I want to take it down as quick as possible. I decide to go for Silver Wind because I think it should be able to take it down a good amount. Okay, never mind. It did almost nothing. That was kind of pitiful, actually. So I go for another Protect. And then next turn, I'm going to try to use Psychic to see how much it does. And hopefully, it takes it down. Okay, well that leads us to the last Pokemon Eldest has, which is Lapras. On the first turn, this thing always sets up Shadow Sky, so it's not too threatening right off the bat. And with that opening, I decide to take down the Ninjask, which I am going to take quite a bit of damage from the Aerial Ace, but also if I can get rid of the Ninjask now, I don't have to worry about it running out of Protects and spamming Aerial Ace later if I'm not able to take down the Lapras in just a couple hits. So it sets up Shadow Sky. And this next turn, I'm just going to put it to sleep and ensure my victory, maybe. That is if it stays asleep, I guess. Otherwise, I just kind of wasted a turn, but that's alright. So, I go for Psychic. And I'm doing... Okay, I'm doing half. So that's good. And I should be able to take it out this next turn. So yeah. Eldest only took 4 attempts, which is pretty good, honestly. I wonder how he'll do against the box legendary Shadow Lugia, who actually might be a bit of a threat to Butterfree, because I don't think I have anything that does too much damage to it. So I decided to go for Sleep Powder here, just to get it to not attack me. And hopefully it sticks. I go for Silver Wind, because I don't know why, I thought it was a Psychic type. Maybe that's just some weird, I don't know, I'm probably just forgetting stuff. Except Psychic doesn't do very much damage to it, so I am actually a little confused now. Anyway, I go for Sleep Powder once again. Actually, it's probably Psychic Flying, isn't it? Yeah, okay. My bad, I just thought about that for a little bit longer. I could have swore it was a water type, I guess. Anyway, I'm able to take it down in just a couple more hits. And of course I get the second Omni Boost on a battle where it really doesn't matter. Anyway, I take it down. And the reason I used Psychic there was to save on some PP. And let's go into the final battle against Gravel. So I have some pretty low hopes for this, honestly, because basically everything on his team, while it doesn't resist Psychic, they definitely don't get taken down by Psychic very easily, other than the Rhydon and maybe the Tauros. Okay, that was more damage than I thought it'd be. I go for Protect here just to stall a turn. And the other thing is the Executor is about the only thing that I actually have a positive type matchup against, because I have the Silver Wind to do 4 times effective damage to it, so I should be able to take it down at any given time. Now I have to decide, do I want to take down the Executor or Rhydon? I decide to do Executor, because if I do get that boost to all my stats, I might be able to survive maybe another hit from Rhydon, but probably not. And unfortunately it gets another hit, and I go down on the first attempt. Okay, well, not too bad for first attempt, considering it doesn't really do well against anything. So I go in, I use Psychic, take it down fairly low, Shadow Fire. Now, one thing to note about all these Pokemon is because they're using Shadow-type moves, all of their attacks are only doing 2 times effective damage, even though some of these Pokemon, like Articuno later on down the line, could be doing 4 times effective damage had the Shadow move actually taken the properties of Ice. So, anyway, just a side note, so technically it is a little easier than had they just been normal. Psychic is able to take down the Moltres, and the Rhydon is asleep. Executor comes out. And I believe this should be able to be taken down with a single Silver Wind. So, it goes down. Okay, that's pretty nice. Out comes Tauros. And this thing is always going to set up Shadow Sky on the first turn. So, I can actually work around the fact that Rhydon just woke up and put it right back to sleep, which is pretty nice. And the fact that it missed as well is pretty good. So it sets up Shadow Sky, so unfortunately I won't be healing anymore, but I'm already at full health, just about, so I should be fairly good. I decided to use Psychic here, because Tauros probably won't be able to survive one. Okay, well luckily it just used Shadow Hold. I think it just about always uses Shadow Hold on the second turn, but sometimes it can just go for a Shadow Rush. Okay, that's a little surprising that it survived, but Silver Wind takes it down. No boost. And out comes Articuno, who I think is probably the most threatening of all the birds, simply because even though the move doesn't have the properties of an Ice-type attack, it does have the freeze chance. So I decided to just attack it right away. Yeah, I could put it to sleep, but then I'm risking the Rhydon waking up and doing tons of damage to me. So, a bit more Fruity Pebble. And because of the special defense drop there, I'm actually able to take it down with another Psychic. And then out comes his final Pokemon. Which this is only, I think, the second or third attempt, so this is going pretty well. Okay, well, I get taken down, but this is pretty good looking. Let me use my rare candies, and we'll just give this a couple of attempts. So, I go in. It's still not a one-shot on the Moltres, but that's alright. And Moltres is doing way less damage. Shadow Wind comes out, and that's still doing a ton of damage, but that's okay. I decide to take down protect a turn to heal, but then I decide to take down the Moltres this next turn. And that's just because the Rhydon has a 50% chance of missing. So while it probably is a threat, I can hopefully put it to sleep before it hits. And yeah, okay, well maybe this was just unlucky. So here we are, a few attempts later, just a couple. And I'm actually not joking, this is only 3 attempts after the previous attempt. So anyway, I go in, I use Psychic on the Moltres just as I did before. Rhydon uses Shadow Wind. And I decide to Sleep Powder the Rhydon to put it to sleep, because I had a few attempts prior where I tried to change up the formula a bit on how I wanted to tackle this, and I got some bad burn chances and whatnot. But I think the second attempt actually was probably the best format for victory, so I decided to go back to that. I take down the Moltres, out comes Executor. Now, one thing I will do to deviate from that is I'm going to put Executor to sleep, because I know for a fact I can one-shot the Executor at basically any time. And on top of that, it's going to be doing less damage with Shadow Wind, just because Rhydon's got a way higher attack stat. So I decide to swap out the two. And on top of that, Rhydon's already been asleep for a couple turns, meaning that it's more liable to just wake up as well. So anyway, Tauros comes out, and with the level increase, I am able to take it down in a single hit now, which is very nice. And then out comes Articuno once again. Now, as long as we don't get frozen, I think we have a pretty good chance of beating it now. So I decide to go for Psychic. No reason to waste Executor turns of being asleep, and on top of that, as we've seen, Articuno is a 2-shot, so honestly, wasting an extra turn isn't really worthwhile anyway, so I'm able to take it down. And then out comes his last Pokemon, which is Zapdos. And just like the other two, his signature move has the power to give us a status condition. In this case, it's paralysis. So we're really hoping that we can just not get hit by that. Silverwind, I decided to just take down the Executor now. I don't think the crit really mattered. Shadow Bolt here. It's doing a decent amount of damage, I guess. It's doing about a fifth, I guess. So I decide to just Sleep Powder it, because if I can just keep it from attacking, that's probably better. And we've already seen Articuno, and I'm pretty sure Articuno is the most specially defensive, so it should be a 2-shot. Yes. Now unfortunately it does wake up, so as long as we don't get paralyzed, we should win. Which we do. And with that, Butterfree has beaten the game with a time of 13 hours, 48 minutes, and 24 seconds. And throughout the game, it got 47 faints, which honestly is pretty good. Because, I don't know about you, but Butterfree really isn't that big of a standout Pokemon, especially when we're talking about decently strong Pokemon. But I think just the fact that it has a few good things, like Psychic is huge. Having Psychic in this game is actually a really good plus, especially, well, just all around, I guess. Silverwind, I know I didn't show it that much, but there were a lot of fights where you run into a lot of dark types, a lot of psychic types, a lot of grass types especially, because Butterfree walls grass types almost 100%, because it's quadruple resistant to them. So it's a pretty good Pokemon for just a lot of random Pokemon. On top of that, it does well against poison types, and the hidden power type did help a lot. But 13 hours and 48 minutes does put it either at the very bottom of B or the very top of C. And I decided I would go the very top of C because it is about an hour and a half difference from Raichu, which I feel like might be the gap between the two. So, with that being said, I guess thanks so much for watching. If you'd like to, subscribe. And like I said, keep putting down suggestions in the comments. I will either do an easy Pokemon next week, just because I really don't have the time right now. I need to, if I can get a video out, I'd like to do it as quick as possible, so I might just choose a legendary and just fly through the game. Or if for some reason I do get time, I will do Corphish, I think. So that being said, thank you so much for watching, and bye.